Hello, anyone and everyone who's watching this. This is going to be chapter 2 of Just Going to Let Them Hate by StoryCat013. Let's get into it. Peter found the devil in its trash. The guy was trying to get out of the fucking dumpster. Had 3 bullet holes in his shoulder. Now, Peter had seen a lot of weird shit when doing this particular chore, throwing away previously used and currently unusable items. But this is like the 6th place. Peter wasn't going to leave him like an asshole, no matter how many people would accuse him of being one. He met Wade Wilson way before Deadpool was even a concept. Actually, Deadpool was never really a concept, it just kind of happened. They have always gone into fights, and those are the most irritating and amusing fights he's ever been in. Every fight with Wayne or Deadpool was just like that. Deadpool met Daredevil eventually, but Peter never knew how, and they weren't telling. Wayne and Peter were literally banned from teaming up by the fucking government. But no one ever said Spidey and DP couldn't have a friendly analyzing session, and obviously the more the merrier. And these guys were scumbags, so hell yeah. You can bash your heads in, Double D. No one's gonna stop you. No one's gonna stop them when they didn't know who they were. They all teamed up once. At least that's how it was supposed to go. Obviously, like most shit in Peter's life, it didn't go according to how it was supposed to be. They formed Team Red, a group of mentally unstable assholes who do not give a single fuck about society and their laws, or anything really, not even personal problems. In fact, they just laughed at their own depression and refused any sort of therapy. They usually generally annoy the shit out of anyone and anything who comes across their paths with them because of the past that they couldn't let go, past that tie them together and wouldn't, no matter how hard they ran from it. But they wouldn't know because they've never tried to outrun the darkness that slowly swallowed them up and pushed everyone they loved away from them. It was a toxic and unhealthy environment that they created for themselves, and Peter should probably get the fuck out of it, but it was the best thing to ever happen to him. Matt was a blind lawyer, and Wayne was a scarred mercenary or bounty hunter when cops or legal people were around, and he was in his street clothes. But those were very particular cases. Because honestly, no one wants to fuck with him or talk to him just by his face alone. And Peter had blatantly mentioned to Matt that he looks like an old avocado after he got shit out, but only when Wayne was in earshot. That's what he knew. He didn't associate their names with faces, he associated their names with real shit and problems. And they probably did the same with him, too. Peter preferred Team Red over the Avengers. They bitched about their problems without getting any meaningful solutions that would end all parties permanently. In fact, their solutions encouraged grudge holding and drinking it away until they forget about it, and then in the morning didn't care about it because they got hangovers. Peter never participated in the alcoholism, but he did enjoy watching Matt and Wayne get drunk and allowed himself to forget about his problems by watching their misery. They didn't give him orders, they just threw sticks and bullets and webs and knives and sometimes sledgehammers and very occasionally a beam, maybe a bomb or two, like small bombs, but mostly glitter and sticks of every material. That they weren't picky at the bad guys and watched the aftermath. Usually it ended with the guy hitting back, which led to one of them punching back and then they were knocked out, but sometimes Wayne punches with his katanas. They're fucking swords, Wayne. Brother floats your boat, and they kind of die unalive, stop breathing permanently. But it was okay because Peter did that too sometimes, and he'd always drop their body in Houston in like 5 different braces, all of which were not where they actually killed the guy. He had a fucking reputation, man. Unlike Wayne, who could just leave the bodies there. Lucky bastard. But sometimes when Peter was too tired, he just blamed it on Wayne. He didn't care that Wilson got all the street cred as long as Peter got to sleep. They fought with little to no communication about battle strategy, and a whole lot of talking about literally anything else. They were way more violent than they needed to be. Peter knows he was more aggressive when around them, but it was almost like they modded each other. They wouldn't get too aggressive that would kill someone by beating them to death. They weren't fans of prolonged death unless completely necessary. But they wouldn't judge each other and they could let loose. Way more than when they were alone or around other people. It was a place for Peter to get his aggressions out. I never did tell anyone because that would ruin it. There was always blood, way too much blood for Peter's usual taste, and Peter minded a lot less around them. He thought it was because they talked too much to notice it, like sleeping all of the problems under a rug. Matt always said he wore red so people didn't know he's bleeding. Wade said it was because he didn't want to deal with the stains. Peter saw the logic in each of these probably messed up problems, but none less accurate, because stains were pain you had to buy like 10 tripods to get them out, and Wayne thought it was just a waste of a perfectly good snack perspective and told them he wore red because it was the cheapest thing on the rack. They nodded and wisely understood that. Team Red only had one plan of action. Just beat them up. That was all. No orders or being told to do things specific and tedious and boring as fuck ways. So as long as they got the job done and they were all good. No plans, no protocols, because plans usually went to shit within the first 20 seconds, and protocols not working were the reasons they were doing this shit in the first place. They were totally off the book, handling things that not even cops could dirty their hands with, because it was because of said plans and protocols going to shit, as previously mentioned. They didn't have this untouchable hierarchy that Peter had to meet the standards for. They weren't arrogant bastards who took the law into their own hands either. They were just people who saw messed up shit in their past and wanted to beat people like that because they were A, mad and wanted to take some sort of revenge, B, had a burst of angelic happenings and suddenly wanted to do what was right. But those were like adrenaline shots and soon wore out after one job that happened out of pure kindness of it. So to say Peter got those the most. Well, see, they were just fucking bored and all. And they all, well, 2/3 of them, Matt had a fucking day job. Ugh, successful people, am I right? Had nothing better to do all day. Team Red was the only time he really could be himself around people. He felt the most relaxed fighting with them because he could use the techniques he grew up on. The ones with guns and fighting dirty and hacking so he could make kittens replace their files, even though sometimes they got fucking weird, like the time DP made him hack into the speakers of this one bad guy's base to play a Lady Gaga Essentials playlist and sing along really off key, even if it blew the cover. All the time that Red threw 2 sticks at him and told him to hit me as hard as you fucking can. Even though he had super strength and probably kill him, because even though Red was fucking awesome, he was enhanced like Hero Wayne was. Suicidal bastards. He loved it. And he got good at reading them. If Matt was punching the bad guys, sometimes hard and literally nearing killing them, he was having a mediocre day. If he's slamming them against the wall and kicking them in the balls over and over and over again, and then proceeding to almost kill them, then he was having a good day. Matt on a bad day was scary. Even for Peter. If Wilson was joking around and constantly while shooting people in the head and slicing the bodies and stuff, it was a good day if he was talking to voice in his head and the bad guys at the same time before turning them inside out. It was a mediocre day. Wayne on a bad day was scary even for Peter. Peter was proud of himself because he could figure them all out, and they were literally the hardest people in the world to figure out, but he also kind of hated Team Red because they could also read him. And Matt was a fucking lie detector, and Wayne just somehow knew. He didn't like that. They never talked to him if he was having a bad day. If he was having a bad day and didn't want to talk about it, they would stay the hell away from him. And they were shit at doing promotions, but very aware of them. It sucked. Because sometimes emotion hurts, editors were just too big, and they took up too much space, and sometimes it made it hard to breathe. You should have stick up your ass, DP said from behind him, where he was waiting for them all to gather on a roof. It was always a rooftop. Wayne said they should be called Rooftop Pals. Matt said it sounded like Magic Treehouse ripoff. Peter responded by reciting the entire first book by memory to punish Wayne, who had never read the Magic Treehouse because he lived in fucking Canada. Wayne had responded that Peter was a fucking audiobook, and Matt agreed that audiobooks are the best kind of books. Peter had said that Matt's opinion was invalid due to the fact that he was blind, and then told him that audiobooks weren't real books, but go off, I guess. The Avengers suck, Peter said in a huff. That was obvious. He shouldn't have been so blawed because he actually wanted to talk about this with them, if only to hear them roast the Avengers, because it would make him feel better. Foggy wouldn't shut up at how good of a job you did, Red said, and Peter groaned. That's not what he wanted. He didn't know how to deal with compliments, and Matt knew it too. Hell, Matt had the same problem, and when Peter didn't know how to deal with something, he either threw it or ran away from it. Unless it was math problems. He always knew how to deal with those. And yet they yell at me. I don't do what they told me to do, and they call me, but I do, and when I do, they yell at me. I just want to be able to do what I need. It's not like I fucked up so drastically that I was irreversible. Peter ranted and crossed his arms, taking them back on track. Wayne fucking laughed, that asshole. Team Red was the only place he could act like the kid he was. No judgment, no scolding, no serious babysitting. They always make fun of his age, but they never actually mean any of the stuff they say. No lectures. Besides, Wayne and Matt, on some level, acted just as childish. It was a fucking sanctuary. So he does have some teen rebellion in him. Attaboy, I always knew you could do it, DP called out, and Peter huffed. Damn right he did. They just didn't know, said teenager. Rebellion wasn't just to spite the Avengers, but to save this damn city from the arrogant. Yeah, he thought it. Sue him. He didn't see the Avengers, Earth's mightiest heroes, out there breaking debt, crippling drugs, and sex trafficking. It might not be immediately world-ending, but sure, it was destroying these people's lives. Wait, that was serious. Backtrack. It's not our fault for not restricting him, and he's a true brat who thinks he can get away with everything he wants, Red said sarcastically, and Peter nodded. Now they were getting it. This is exactly why he came to Matt and Wayne. They got him. Damn straight it's your fault. I don't like being told how to do my job, thank you very much, Peter said. As a matter of fact, he felt a little better. Good, always remember your manners, DP said, coming up next to him to sit down. Right on his other side, there was silence for a while, and then Peter heard police sirens inside. I want to quit so bad, Peter muttered, and Red barked out a harsh laugh. Same mood! We're all fucking idiots. Wanna kick some ass? Hell yeah. 16 years earlier, the Red Room was cold, both physically and mentally. Washed out white walls that were in desperate need of a repainting, but no one ever said anything about that part aside from meaningless, peeling point. There was not a speck of dirt, not a single blemish in the routine. There was no time to even look at the wall, much less to care about it. It was a soul-sucking place if you even had a soul. Though usually you didn't have it coming in. Usually didn't have a choice in that part either. And there was only one way to come out. At least that's what they told her. It was not a place for love. The kids who grew up knew nothing of it, and adults who scoffed at the concept. Discipline, work, death. There was no room for trivial things such as love and affection. But that was a given. You were never taught that. It was supposed to be a common sense. In a place like this, how could one maintain love of all things? Natasha was indifferent to the concept. She didn't bother with it or try to understand it. It was something that just existed, and she'd never be able to attain it. That was all she knew. She didn't care, though. It seemed useless to her anyways. She generally thought it was just a trivial, meaningless fluke and gave no other thoughts until she experienced it. She knew how horrible it was. It was terrible, nothing to scoff at, but to be warned about. It was dangerous, more dangerous than any weapon feasible to man. It was soothing and lulled you into a false sense of security, then ripped out your heart into a million pieces, and then stitched it back together wrong. It was excruciating, yet it was addicting. The pain was like a drug she couldn't get enough of. And like all drugs, she was sure it was slowly killing her inside. And yet, she still didn't seem to care. The first time Natasha experienced love is what one would call a phase. At least that's what the director had called it when she figured out that she was dubbed it for whole 3 months after she was banned from seeing her lover ever again. After Madame B, her director and tormentor, as she soon realized, had been pissed and tortured Natasha 10 ways to hell. She was supposed to be the Black Widow, supposed to be her mission. Her first, in fact, with her having such a title she had been working all her life. A title she screwed people over in 15 ways. A title she had poured her blood, sweat, and tears when she was younger. The Black Widow name cry for something she knew she would never screw up. Something she couldn't screw up. And yet, she did. All because of that useless, excruciating, painful emotion. Love had been her downfall, because she underestimated its power. It was no excuse. Natasha was weak against it. She hadn't been paired, and that wasn't on the director or the trainer she killed. It was solely on her. She owned up to it, but she would never be more powerful than love. It just didn't seem possible. It started as a joint mission between the Red Team and the Hydra. She didn't remember the mission, only her partner. That probably was the problem, but she never worried about it. Her partner was caught under the same deadly trance she was, so she could hardly blame him for not being as strong as the haze. Before then, she was a top student in the Red Room. If there had been any respect to a student, she would certainly had it before that mission. Her partner was an enhanced American soldier who she knew nothing else more than what she was told. Turns out they weren't lying when they said he knew just as much as she did. He didn't even know his own name. They only knew his mission, their mission. It lasted months. Months of staying in close proximity to one another. Months of training in secret in deep, dark forest under moonlight and starless skies. Months of sharing one dirty room with only one bed. Months of fighting, eating, and living together. They were never apart for more than 3 hours. By week 3, they were nearly inseparable, where the weeks before they wanted their own space. At first they didn't talk much. The clarification on the mission given, you never knew who could be listening. Slowly, though, their training sessions under the moonlight in the forest, they started talking in short bursts, commenting on a punch, scoffing at a missed kick, never so much emotion displayed. And it surprised both of them. Neither of them were talkers. And even if they were, they didn't have much to talk about. Their lives were pretty straightforward. At least hers was. They had no dreams. The superiors made sure to crush any of those. Early on in their training, they had no preferences. They were soldiers, and soldiers didn't complain about trivial things that do not compromise the mission. Their focus was only on their mission, but somehow they managed to find something to scrounge up, something hidden within the recess of their minds, a real general preference, and not just a persona created to lure enemies into a false trap. They took comfort in each other's words and presence. Natasha had never been this close to another person, to another being. She found the times where he was late to be lonely. It was stupid, but that feeling of emptiness was almost too much for her to bear. She hated the feeling, even if she was used to it. It was never like this before, never amplified to this magnitude. She had been trained to be independent on other people, especially men. She could take care of herself, and a female rose was just a ruse to trick enemies into a false sense of security. Then again, she never felt the way she did around anyone else, including the dull men that flashed briefly in her life. Apparently, he reciprocated the feelings. It was only once, and no one was supposed to find out. How could they? It was just a taste of love, of what love felt like. How could it have been so wrong if it felt so right at the time? If there was no evidence, how could they be blamed? At least there was supposed to be no evidence. The mission ended and he had to go. She hated seeing him leave, but said nothing of it, as he gave her one last indignant look. When he was escorted out, he had no choice. She was a soldier. She had no attachments. At least that's how it was supposed to be. The feeling of loneliness ate at her more than anything. It was more painful than the worst torture. She was sure it was a form of torture. Torture that ripped her heart and got at her insides. Torture that made it feel like she couldn't breathe sometimes. She begged her emotions to stop killing her. She vowed to never love again. But it didn't go away. It dulled over time, and even when dulled, it was more painful to think about. She never wanted to love another being as long as she lived, and then she started to get sick. Present. They don't apologize next time Peter was with them. Peter just got a text on his beat-up, cracked, untraceable burner phone. In your face, Nick. He's a Gen Z superior in every way in technology generation who used a creative creation of all mankind for memes. From theories saying that they needed help downtown, he rolled his eyes and patched in his comms, even if he shouldn't do this. Even if he wasn't ready to see the Avengers, much less think of them without getting a wave of nausea and panic. But people needed help, and Peter would be damned if he let the Avengers break down his self-esteem so much he couldn't help. So fuck it. But did Fury have to tell him so fucking late? He knew he probably would have showed up anyways. He would have if he wasn't swinging on the other side of New York with his earbuds in, looking specifically away from the giant squid monster in Manhattan. He just had to finish this one mugger with a little note and gift wrapped in webs for the cops. He made a bow and everything and went to get new Sharpies so he could take his time breaking this one out. It was fluorescent purple. Can you believe it? They had that. And Wade had already called dibs on the pink that came with it, but Peter didn't know why Wade needed it. Whenever Deadpool left a note, usually to Peter or Matt, if he wasn't home to feed his cat, he left it in bright red crayon, if not the stupid, cheap, crazy art shit. No, Deadpool was a hardened, serious man. He was an ex-Special Force and had been through the worst kind of hell to get his power. He used fucking Crayola, damn it. But if Peter were here to talk about the proper purchasing of children's school supplies. He would pure Dave, this muggitude. He was about to knife this poor lady. One life-saving emergency at a time, please. Aliens would just have to get in line. Thank you for shopping at Lee Beats down the Spidey. Have a good day. It didn't say much to them as he joined the fray, and they didn't seem to notice until he kicked a mini squid who was created out of the mommy squid suction things. Like, talk about independent labor, but gross. From nearly killing Falcon by shooting lasers at him. Seriously, when did squids laser shoot from their fucking tentacles? And said, "Welcome to Chili's." And Sam's surprise face was priceless. He laughed at it, and that's why he wore the mask, because they couldn't see his facial expressions and looked like a fucking idiot. He said as he tramples in with his bright red and blue spandex. Pretend like nothing ever happened. Spider-Man, pretend like you're okay. Hey, kid. Like you always do. What's up? Yeah, sorry I'm late. Fury didn't send the evac in time. He said a bit too quickly, but he didn't care. They seemed weird too. Much more gentle than last time. Maybe Fury told him about your tummy ache. He growled at the voice snickering. But not enough so the Avengers could pick it up on the comms. I think I was on an auxiliary guest list. He and that a voice was going to have words when he might have words with Fury too. He wasn't some whiny kid who got bent out of shape because of one bad day. It just had been a lot that day. About time, Natasha said. There was a judgy voice of a grown-up lecturer. Yeah, I missed you there for a second. Welcome back to reality, bitch. He honestly did not want to lecture. He just wanted me to come to continue with his day. At least they weren't pitying him. Or at least Black Widow wasn't. He could always count on her for the constant message of "I hate you." Frank left. There was more mini squid. Squishy that is not proper squid birth process to go off, I guess. Thingies on the right. God damn it, they couldn't see from down there. And there were still people in the way. They were going to get hurt. But Peter was going to get out. Peter went right, obviously. His logic was flawless. Fuck it. He was going to get yelled at anyways. If last time was anything to go by, he shouldn't change his whole dynamic that he had going on with Avengers. That was like a one-night stand kind of thing. Not that Peter knew what a one-night stand really was, not intimately. But he didn't know what sex was, like romantically, consensually. Like, he was too pumped on adrenaline for this conversation to be happening with himself at this point. Listening to Avengers against his bad judgment was a one-time thing. One and done. That was all those ungrateful bastards got. That's what Fury wants. You just think rationally, not out of spite. Go left. Listen to them. Yeah, so go right? Ha. Ha. Homonyms. What the hell? Not again. Stupid kid. The fight's this way. No, it's not. Peter rolled his eyes. He connected his further squishy with the Spidey squash. He believed the proper term was squash sound, so it made a loud noise for emphasis, even if the black ink whenever it grows. He heard muffled and growls and groans and smiled to himself at the chaos he caused. What you say? Tell us next time. Peter really couldn't find himself to give a single shit about the Avengers premises. Alright, with the roll one more time. Fury didn't go easy on him, like the Avengers. Fucking bastard didn't have enough of the soul to feel guilty. He was potentially pissed and irritated. Those are his only two emotions. Peter would bet all of his money. No, he wouldn't. He would bet all of his... If he's more responsible than that, he would bet all of his Monopoly money that those were the only two emotions Fury had ever experienced. Ever. It was a cycle. Peter sometimes wondered how fucked up your life has to be to get that way. Peter had asked once, and Fury stormed away irritably. It was truly inspiring. But as much as he looked up to the old grump, and it was inspired to be as get off my lawn as Nicholas J. Fury, he would never in the history of ever give him his secrets. Saw your work with Deadpool and Daredevil yesterday. Fury saw it off, and Peter just kept a blank face. The face that said, "Are we really doing this? Come on, Nick. At least try to be subtle about this." Peter was actually surprised that he had balls to touch this subject, especially after all the shit that happened not even 3 days ago. He wasn't going out his team, or at least the closest thing he had to one. The preference term was band, bunch, gang, cult, whatever you have of assholes, but it was just a recommendation. They were also considered bastards. They are unstable assholes. He gave a grin and bounced the balls of his feet. And as long as they don't want to see you, you ain't seeing them. He laughed at the confused faces, but Peter didn't know why they were confused. Maybe he may have just jumbled up words. He thinks he was pretty straightforward, but he was never very good on delivery. You fight with them? Krint asked with a crooked, suspicious brow. What did they care who he hanged out with in his free time? Anyways, it wasn't like they were his goddamn guardian. Deadpool kills. Natasha saw with a bit of venom in her tone. Bold of you to assume we all don't kill. And isn't Deadpool a bit violent? Tony asked, but Peter could tell by his tone of his voice he was in fact stating as well. Well, shit. Whom's the fuck did they think they were to judge? It's not like this is a peaceful line of work. The fact that the Avengers were only known for hitting their problems in the ground so hard that they never saw the light of day, and not being good at negotiating any way, shape, or form. They have the fucking Hulk, for crying out loud, and they were afraid of using him. Destroy the city on a pen drop, even if Peter thought he was one of the most valid of the Avengers, yet that could Bruce separately. And he didn't think that was an old orthodox or even silver to plate method, but sure as hell worked. So what if a few people died? Yeah, sure, it's not ideal, but if they were bad guys, it should at least soften the blow. Plus, they wouldn't hurt anyone else, and it's not like Peter didn't feel a shit ton of guilt on his shoulders afterward. Yeah, Peter shrugged. Fury sighed like it was a millionth time. He knew prying information out of Peter was impossible. Or at least he should know that Peter may or may not have been known for his interrogation techniques, but he did make his tormentors' lives hell when he was interrogated. It was almost cute how Nick tried. Why? He asked very demandingly and tiredly. Peter didn't like the tone, but smiled regardless. No, he wouldn't give much away anyways. Gonna have to be more civic on that one, Peter said lightly, and Fury groaned and rubbed his temples in annoyance. For love of all things holy, Fury muttered to himself, and Peter's smile grew. Why do you fight with them? He said in a voice that was very specific. Peter would have complimented him on it, but chose not to and give Fury this one. He hoped that Fury knew it had been. He could have been a hell of a lot more annoying, and this was an offering of God sent and pity. And mostly he was way too tired to actually keep the conversation going for a while. They don't tell me what to do. He stated like it was obvious, in his, what he liked to call, teenage voice. It was like the kind of response he got from people like the Avengers, and the things Peter thrived off of. Exasperation and annoyance. You know, the good stuff. But she loved that, Cap grumbled, and Peter barked out an unexpected but not unwanted laugh, because he actually got Captain America annoyed with him. It was fucking amazing. MJ would be so proud of him if she was here. Shut up. Yeah, I do. He laughed, annoying his voice and gross emotions. Steve growled, and Peter tried to sniffle. His giggles enforced on the fact that he was in the present and forgot about his past. Pretending works. I got you mad, holy shit, like, I haven't done that to you yet. Everyone else, sure, but they're easy, but you, this is amazing. Parker! Fury barked, and Peter choked on his laughter, stood at alert, snapping his head to Fury. What a way to suck the fun out of it, Nick. He deflated. Yeah, sorry, but, like, there's this guy and he stole something, Peter muttered, rubbing the back of his neck nervously. Avoiding was one of his specialties. But when it didn't work, I went a bunch of scary Avengers getting pissed off at him, and he didn't feel like hiding them. He could always be evasive. Fury was actually really good at taking a hit and dropping the subject, letting him figure out on his own, trusting him, which was stupid. He let Nick down eventually. It was only a matter of time, but Peter always managed to get out of situations far more dangerous or worse than whatever Nick thought of before. He always got the job done, no matter who or what he was working with, even if it was all by himself, especially if it was all by himself. Not this time, apparently. It was a matter of time. What? Fury ground out, prying everything out of him. Prying everything out of him was a pain, he knew. It's why Fury didn't do it often, but Peter gave kudos that he suck it, or this long without murdering him. But Peter wondered why he was doing it now. It was very hard to be this annoying, Nick. Please, appreciate the effort. Condolences included. Drop the fucking conversation. Kids from Afghanistan, Peter said in a quick mumble. He didn't know why he was self-conscious about it, or maybe he did. It was because he handled these kind of things 1,022 times before, and Fury never said anything about before, and there was literally no reason why he should now, except for puking when you were on the phone with him. Kids? Fury said, asked like he was saying, really? And okay, maybe suing kids was a bit of a big problem. Maybe it was just weird way to say kidnapping, but he wasn't entirely wrong. He wasn't wrong. He didn't look at the Avengers' reactions. Instead, Peter looked at Fury, then realized as everyone stood up straighter. And their puppies. Fury looked down like murderers at the addition. I wasn't sure if it was because of the situation or how Peter made it sound like it was a big... And, like, it was a big... Like, it wasn't a big deal. Again with the fucking dogs? Fury said like he couldn't believe how blatant Peter was with this. But the novelty of kids trafficking, which Peter did not tell them about, had worn off Peter long ago. Probably when he himself practically trafficked because he wasn't found in America, but in Russia. They were puppies! Small children dogs, and they were mutts, and they were so cute. Rottweilers and German Shepherds. I'm 90% sure a kid even let me pet one. And guess what? I got to pet it! It was the best thing I've ever done in my life. Peter said, emphasizing his point, waving his arms up and down, ending a satisfying cross and nodding his head approvingly, like he just said the most amazing reason to live. To him, it probably was. No, it was most definitely 100% was. Oh, so your superhero... Oh, so your superhero criteria was met, Fury said in a highly sarcastic voice. Now that you knew everyone got out, okay? Peter was honestly assaulted. That Fury ever doubted that he would let those kids and dogs down. That was not meant to answer back. Peter answered anyways. Yes! God damn, kid. 15 years earlier. Love worked her way into life again. But instead of a ruthless man with no clue about his past, it came in the form of a mini version of said man. Needless to say, the director was furious. Upon seeing her child, even as her honor and respect was stripped, even as she was looked on in disgust, even as a child, she had a fucking kid. Oh my god, she was a mother. She couldn't find it in herself to care. She never had a choice before to have a child or not. In fact, upon invitation as the Black Widow, she was supposed to be Stittle. She was going to be after a vital mission. Ned, when they found out that she was pregnant, she was supposed to get an abortion, but she stupidly set herself up and fucking argued with her superior about a dumb mistake she made. That she never disobeyed anything she was told to do before, and anything to keep the kid. She had no idea why she wanted to keep the kid. She didn't even know what a mother does. The director looked affronted and astonished as she was when she spoke out. The disgusted look turned into shock, then turned into sneers. She couldn't care less about what they thought in the light of what her love and her child thought. Oh my god, why would her child think of her? Not when she was looking at her baby, a baby made by love, her love, a child made by warm love and not cold necessary. Something that she thought was impossible, for her at least. Pyotr Romanov, director, wanted to get rid of him. She had glared and held the child close to her chest and refused to give him up, even as her boss made to grab him in front of her hand, right from her hands. She would not let him go, not as she did for her partner. She would beg this time she had to, and Natasha had never begged a second in her life, not even thought about it. But she was willing to cast all of her griefs for this tiny child that she created, for her son. That was when the doctor dared stupidly, probably a little more stupid than her, to speak out, telling the director that he could be trained and used for the Red Room. It was, after all, the biological child of two enhanced individuals that hadn't been tested before that any of them knew of. He could be the first child that grew up on all of the pillars of the Red Room. No outside connections, no other purpose other than to be loyal to the Red Room. The doctor didn't do it out of the kindness of his own heart. His yellow teeth smiled when the director approved reluctantly. He did it because he was sick and wanted to run tests. Wanted to strap him down to a cold table and experiment on him. Wanted to open her child, and dissect him like a frog. She thanked the doctor once. They trained her like a dog after that. Tedious and demanding things that were meant for the children, but cranked up to a level where it would be taxing. Not stopping and relentless, she barely had time to breathe. And sweat was her constant companion. They beat her and worked and tortured her body over and over. But at the end of the night, when dawn was just peeking over and she was sent to sleep for a few hours, that's when she finally got to see him. Her precious baby Pyotr. She would do it again. It was worth it. He was worth it. The next few years, watching him grow and walk and speak in all three languages she taught him. He watched her train, but did not fight, not yet. Her child was smart, smarter than most children, and quiet. Even if he was still a toddler, he was already developing a personality. One that wasn't cold or heartless, but warm and compassionate. She knew that the first night she came in and he was awake reaching for her, at first, she thought he wanted something, but his diaper was clean, and all he wanted was wanted her to lay down with him and cuddle. It melted her heart it made her love him more, and she didn't think that was possible. He progressed faster and adapted much quickly to his lessons than any of them thought he would. For that she was grateful. The director was somewhat praised. She loved her little Piotr with everything she had. He made it easy to love. And then that love was ripped away by cold, heartless hands. That same heartless hands that ripped his father away in a cruel twist of fate, a decision that as sudden as Natasha's love for her son. The worst part was that she couldn't fight back, because she had tried. The worst part was how she couldn't fight, how she could do nothing but watch as she was strapped to a chair and watch as they knocked Piotr out and carried him to where she did not know. She was again experienced the worst feeling in the world for a second time in her life. Natasha cried for the first time since she could remember. She hadn't done enough to keep her love and let it slip through her fingers again. She hated love. She hated it so much. Present time. Natasha did not like the kid. He wasn't a bad kid at all. Snarky and a little sassy, but not a bad kid. Those were probably the funniest traits about him, and she always had a thing about deceiving looks. In fact, he seemed more sweet than anything. The Avengers just happened to be on his bad side all the time. Well, at least when he was incredibly tired. Seriously, kids should get some sleep. But if you help old ladies cross the road with your superpowers and then and go out of your way to get cats out of trees, how bad could you possibly be? She knew she was off-putting to him. She snapped at him, though not as much as Steve did, whenever he got too close. She was keeping him arm's length, because he was 15 and had no business being around this kind of shit. Though he did get that a lot, but only because it was true, even if she could tell he was sick of it, no matter how much he tried to ignore it or roll with it, or make it seem like it didn't get to him. A good defense mechanism that she wished she had when she was younger too, but it didn't make it any less annoying. It must have been especially so when he was recommended for doing a good job. She was getting annoyed with it a bit too, but he reminded her of Piotr a little. Even the names are similar, Piotr would be 15 too. She thought that she had to keep him at arm's length, because, as she said before, the kid had more than 2 brain cells. He was active way more than he let on. Not like he tried to hide it, but he didn't necessarily advise it. It wasn't obvious of him. So she reprimanded him more than he deserved, because she was playing the same game as him, pretending nothing was wrong. Sometimes she wonders if Piotr was Peter. Would he be using the same power? Would he be using his powers for good, or would he be using them for Hydra? Would he kill people like she did, or would he try to save as many people as Peter? Would he do the right thing even if it meant disobeying orders? Would he be free to choose what he wanted to do? The more Tasha thought about it, the more like Peter she wanted Piotr to be. She wanted her child to be exactly like Peter, but that wasn't fair. What if Piotr was lost or different? She would love Piotr anyways, but when she imagined him, she imagined Peter. Maybe it was his name, or maybe the superpowers or mysterious background she didn't know, because she didn't feel like this when she had met Harley. But she knew things about Harley. She never digged into Peter's past, even if she could find anything out, she didn't want to, because the less she knew about Peter, the more she could pretend he was Piotr. Then she got mad because Peter wasn't Piotr. But some maternal thing inside her didn't want Peter to get hurt either, because Peter was perfect. She didn't know how Piotr would be yet, but she knew he would be perfect too. But Piotr would expose Peter's flaws and free her from the cage that Peter Parker was. She could go on and find out about his entire life and pick it apart like she was supposed to. For now, she got mad at herself for not letting herself get attached to the boy. It meant she had to prove it too, by being mean and cold and not helping when he seemed like a kick puppy. And if she found an opportunity, kicking him even more. It was messed up logic, twisted, so it made sense, but the longer she thought about it, the more her head hurt, the more regret and remorse she could feel, because Peter was just a kid. He was supposed to know where he wasn't supposed to know what kid traffickers did the most business, or murderers laid low, or supervillains' evil layers was. But he did, and somehow it seemed like too much for him to put Natasha's weird emotions about her probably dead son on top of it. He already seemed to hate his own emotions. Why would she want to deal with hers? She didn't like it. She knew what she was about to do about it. Peter had a lot of things piled on top of him lately, and Natasha could see it. He didn't sleep. He was getting skinnier and slouched more. His eclipse was smudged too dry, and his timing is all off. He's tired and doesn't need more stress, but she had to do it anyways. You should have reported it. Human trafficking is way too dangerous for you, Natasha sneered. He reminded her of what she lost, somewhere inside of her. She knew it was unfair, unnecessary, cruel to Parker. She was glad Peter was as strong as he is. He didn't deserve the hate that was boiling inside of her. Somehow it was easier to talk it out on him. Maybe because she knew he could take it and wouldn't be offended. Somehow he never got offended. Or maybe he was offended. But he was very understanding. She had seen him take Steve's heat about fucking seatbelts because the captain was having a bad day. But she didn't think the same method applied to favors. She really didn't want to owe him, not when she already owed him so much. But she would do it anyways, for Piotr. Fury had sent her to the docks to deal with the situation, but when she got there, the police were then social service there was too. The guns were scattered everywhere. The dealers were webbed. Anger boiled inside of her for the kid being so reckless when she needed him. He was going to ruin everything. He couldn't die, not when Piotr was still missing. She found Spider-Man on a rooftop, exactly 1,000 meters away, on top of a roof, where the police couldn't see him, but he could see them. His suit was a bit scratchy and dirty, but he looked otherwise unharmed, just a bit more tired. He was probably just a bit tired. He was probably more tired and banged up than he let on. Natasha had forced herself not to care. Peter had to take care of himself if he was going to live in the world where he wanted to. But what if he didn't want to? He noticed her as soon as she stepped on the rooftop, though, snapping his head towards her, mask still in place, her hands were on her hips. He looked confused on why she was there. She looked as if she wanted an explanation. To get rid of that stupid mask, it made it hard to read him with it on. "Can I help you?" he asked as he looked up, not bothering to stand up. His voice was a bit out of breath and wheezy, but otherwise gave nothing away. She didn't mean to get so frustrated with him. "Why are you so—" She groaned into her hand, and he laughed and took off the mask. His face was pale and his eyes tired, but they held a childish amusement in them. It contrasted himself, his actions and words, and Natasha didn't know which one was genuine most of the time. It always seemed alternative. "Insufferable?" he asked with mirth as he turned to face her. She glared at his smile. He analyzed her for a minute mysterious sparkles never leaving his eyes, and he had a person with missed the tension in his shoulders, as if he already knew what she was going to ask. "I have a theory about you," he said, instead of following through with his hunch. Natasha could tell he was letting this play out. "Way more than 2 brain cells, smart kid. I don't want to hear it," she said, not amused. She was trying to ask a professional favor here, but at the same time, she needed this conversation to play out his way. Mind herself that he was a kid, that he needed some control if he wasn't going to half-ass this. "I think you do," he said, his voice dropping the lightness in it. It wasn't much of a contrast as she had thought it would be. I think you don't hate me like you try to," Peter said, and cocked his head at her. "And for the life of me, I can't figure out why you do that." "I don't try to hate you," Natasha said, astounded, but at the same time not surprised. She let herself feel a little bad at the kick puppy look he flashed across his face before it settled into a neutral look. "Yes, you do," he said, like it wasn't a big deal, but the sadness and disappointment leaked into his voice. It made something in her chest contrast painfully. "I remind you of someone, don't I?" he asked, more in a mumble. She felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. Yes, I do. It took me a while to figure out, but I know I do," he said, jumping up and walking to the ledge. Her eyes followed his back. She let herself analyze him. It didn't take long to figure out that he had this conversation before. That he lost someone like this. He understood that he would never understand what her pain was like, and it was honestly more comforting that if he didn't know what she felt like at the same time, it was more heartbreaking. It was the most heartbreaking thing she ever seen. He just seemed so tired of it. "And isn't it weird that you remind me of someone too?" he asked, and it caught her a bit off guard. "You're crossing a line, asshole," she growled out. She hadn't meant to be so mean to him, but she didn't know how to feel about what he said. He looked back with large brown eyes widening in something only a child can manage. "So I'm right," he said with a little laugh. It made her mad because this was supposed to be serious. If I wasn't there, there'd be no line to cross. There was silence on the rooftop for a while. The conversation had progressed so fast, but she didn't know the proper way to bring up, "Help me find my lost son that you remind me of, even if I've never met him." Natasha shifted his gesture for her to sit next to him. She approached slowly but confidently and sat down next to him, but didn't look at his face. More silence as the sun went down and the sky was a burning orange, until he spoke again. "Do you not like the person I remind you of?" he said. It was soft, gently, not carefully, but comforting, reminding her that he wasn't the same person she wanted him to be. She didn't answer for a while. She didn't think she would, until she did. "No, I loved him with everything I had," she answered honestly. He nodded, but didn't face her. "How about you?" It was only fair that he answered her honestly, as she did. "I don't know. I don't think I hated her," Peter said, and it sounded like he was contemplating how to explain it, or he just didn't know how to explain it. It was okay if he didn't, because she didn't know how to explain hers either. She wasn't expecting him to continue, but he did. "No, I'm sure I can't remember her all the way, but I think I was too young to remember her face. But I think it was my mom," Peter whispered. Natasha snapped her head towards him. Peter shrunk in himself, almost self-consciously, about something he never let himself do. He looked guilty, like he shouldn't have said that. He probably shouldn't have, but he did look lighter somehow. Then he started to stutter with your red brush painting his cheeks. "Oh my goodness, Miss Rover, I'm so sorry. That was weird. I know you're not my mom, but you remind me of my son," she said, and didn't know why she didn't hide the small smile smile on his mouth as his mouth cramped shut. And he looked at her with that confused puppy look again. She didn't know why she said it. She wasn't supposed to say it. Not like that, anyways. She made sure her face gave nothing away, but she couldn't find anything in herself to regret it. Your son? He whispered in a hoarse voice, more to himself, almost as if it was painful to say. He was calculating whether or not that had been something he had read or heard or something. He was working something out in his head, but it kept coming up blank because he seemed to be confused. She expected questions. He didn't ask them, though. She was oddly grateful for that. I won't tell anyone, he said instead. If she could be more grateful to the kid, she would be. She didn't have to threaten him to keep his mouth shut. He knew exactly the right thing to say. He didn't owe her a damn thing, yet he was keeping this. Something, if the roles were reversed in a weird way, she wouldn't hesitate to expose him for. He also seemed to understand her request, though he didn't nod or make any indication that he knew what she was going to ask something. He knew what she wanted, and somehow she knew he was fully invested in this. If anyone could find Peter, it was Peter Parker. And that is part 1 of Just Gonna Let Them Hate, Chapter 2 by Sorry Kitty 013. I'm probably going to have part 2 of it done and uploaded tomorrow, but I honestly don't know. I'm just kind of doing this for fun, and I'm honestly so sorry for how much I stuttered or repeated what I said, and if I said any words wrong, it's because my throat sounds horrible to me at the moment. I can honestly not I can barely understand what I'm saying at the moment right now. So, at least to me. But I want to record this anyways, so I'm super sorry if I mistaked a word, said it wrong, or anything like that. And I will see you next time. Bye!